Hey, this is Bill Heck. You're watching the whole podcast.
Welcome to the whole. I am Rob Sprans.
I'm Lori Levine.
And we are joined by Bill Heck, who you're going to see a lot of in 2022. Bill Heck is going to be in the Ray Donovan movie, which premieres on January 14th at 9 o'clock in Showtime. Now, Ray Donovan is a show that I absolutely love. Bill, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you're playing the role of a young Mickey, who's played by Jon Voight, who, in my opinion, is the most engaging character on the show. And I watched the trailer for the movie, and you're getting punched. You're punching a lot. There's a lot of activity around you. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the movie itself and where this stands in the Ray Donovan universe, and a little bit more about that?
Yeah. As far as I know, it came about because the production team was expecting to have the last two seasons, the 7 and 8. They were kind of banking on wrapping the whole story up in the final two seasons. And after season 7, everyone was essentially assuming that we were going forth at 8. Some of the entities that own Showtime were sold to other people. There was a lot of corporation exchange, and the final season of that got lost in the mix, and was not renewed. There was a sufficient fan outcry to see the end. That season 7 definitely ends on a pretty serious cliffhanger. Not just your standard season cliffhanger, but the whole series. The central conflict is between Ray, played by Liev Schreiber, and his father, Mickey Donovan, played by Jon Voight, as you said. So that is where it's all headed at the end of season 7. Everything is really sparky, really coming to a head. So I think particularly in light of that, any of the fans who went the whole way along were expecting a gnarly but sufficient resolution. Right. And so people got upset, and people got upset enough that the powers that be greenlit a feature film to tell the ending. And it was co-written by Liev Schreiber and David Hollander. David Hollander is a showrunner. He directed a lot of the episodes you've seen if you've watched the series. And was put, from the minute I read the script, it's put together with real love for these characters, real attention to, what I think the people who have followed the series are going to be looking for. It's deeply satisfying. It also really embodies kind of the aesthetic of a feature. It's not just a longer episode of television. It feels like a really significant, singular, intentional artistic period on the end of this Ray Donovan sentence. So it's got everything.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a really satisfying experience for everyone.
Yeah, and it seems like it even has shades of a prequel in it, as far as going back and telling Mickey's story through, you as playing his character in a younger version of him, which you've done before. So it's it's not the first time you're doing that. But I was so curious as to what you have to do as an actor to go back, and do you watch what young Jon Voight is like a little bit? Do you get to spend time with Jon? I know since you're doing the earlier scenes, you might not necessarily be in them with him, but like, what preparation do you have to go? Because those are big shoes to fill.
Big shoes to fill. I went back and watched a lot of stuff. The episode I did one episode in season 7 as a young Mickey, and was brought in by a few people, including Jim Leonard, who's one of the producers and writers, and Kira Sedgwick, who I'd worked with years before, who was directing the episode. And Kira put me in touch with one of the editors who took out some significant episodes from I hadn't watched the series at that point. So that she gave me about, I think, 8 to 12 episodes that focus heavily on Mickey. So I was able to get a sense of his place within the context of the story, and his take on the character in a deeper sense. I watched Old Voight.
lovely demeanor that he has as the character.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, that guy's fascinating. Because
Right?
he's such a disaster. He's a total disaster, fuck up. Like a brutally awful father, but also like deeply dear and often
Mhm.
well-meaning,
Yep.
seemingly.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable tightrope that Jon has managed to walk through all 7 seasons.
Yeah, and he has you
So
like
it was
well, I'm sorry, yeah, he has you 1 minute feeling bad for him and 1 minute saying,
yeah,
"Fuck this guy." Like
yeah,
literally sometimes in this
exactly. Yeah.
couple of scenes, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's extraordinary. So I looked back at a lot of that stuff, and then maybe second or third day of shooting, when we was getting to some of the more intense stuff with young Ray. We were up in Yonkers. I believe Jon actually grew up. He had the day off. He rents an apartment down in Greenpoint or Williamsburg near the studio, which,
Mhm.
for those who don't know New York geography, is about as distant within New York City as you can get one place to the other. He drove
Right.
up on his day off, sat in the makeup trailer with me for about an hour, completely uncued, didn't know he was going to be there, just showed up and sat down, and we just talked about the guy, and he was very right from the beginning. He was like, don't worry about what I do. Don't worry about it. You do your thing. You're going to have your own thing. If I would just say anything, he doesn't give a shit. Just before, when you hear action, just throw the pages and say, I don't give a shit. And so he gave me, it relaxed me very much, I think,
Yeah.
and gave me a sense of the character. The character, it's part of his draw. It's why he's so charming, because he's not afraid in some ways. It's also why he's so destructive, because
Mhm.
he doesn't give a shit often.
Right.
But he was really helpful. It reminds me, I when we came to shoot the movie, oh Jesus, this was a serious schooling. So we had like a cast dinner before we started shooting, right? So some of the
Mhm.
core cast got together, we had a nice dinner, we chatted. They were going to start shooting. We got together on like a Sunday. They started shooting following Wednesday. I was going to be called for a couple of weeks. They were doing the contemporary day cast, and Jon wanted to work out some ideas, like a gesture that would echo from the present day to the past. So maybe we'd work on a kind of
Like
gesture from scene to scene. And
connection. Yeah, that's cool.
so he was like, I think I'm going to do it in this scene. So why don't you come to set this day, watch the scene. Um, and so I said, sure, I'll come in. And this is about 2 weeks before I had to do anything. So it was still relatively romantic prep, sort of, been a year and a half, kind of getting back in the Boston accent,
Yeah.
reintroducing myself. So I wasn't ready to go by any means. So I get there about 5 minutes before they roll on Jon's coverage on this scene with Ray, this deeply emotional, heart wrenching scene with Ray.
Mhm.
Uh, and he murders it. Just, we're all in Video Village, all the crew, everyone was just in tears after one take. Like, it was a masterclass.
Mhm.
And David Hollander, I'm sitting next to, who's directing it, the showrunner, goes, maybe we should see a flash of you in the scene. Maybe Reese sees a flash of his early father. Once you get into costume, and you can go on and do the scene.
Ugh.
So
Follow him.
we've just seen this amazing, iconic performance happen, and I got to go learn the scene, get into a costume that's too big for me, and do it in front of everybody else. It was deeply, deeply humbling. Shows how outclassed I am. But Jon fucking sat there with me, sort of behind Ray, and just was like, here's what he's thinking here, here's what he's thinking here. Gave me an introduction. He
Amazing.
couldn't have been more generous. Had no ego attached to it at all. It was pretty extraordinary, I gotta say.
Yeah, and the guy's an icon. I mean, the first movie I cried to as a child was The Champ. Like I remember that moment, and because it wasn't you're a kid too, so I remember it wasn't just like a little tear like you get now. I was bawling at that. And guys,
Yeah. Yeah, I was sitting next to Hollander before he threw me in, and I was like, Jesus, man. And Hollander goes, have you seen The Champ? I said, no, I haven't. He goes, watch The Champ.
Yeah.
One Watch the Champ and had the exact experience you're talking about.
Yeah, so true. So when he walks in the trailer, like, and you didn't expect him to come, which is maybe better. Maybe it's better you didn't know he was showing up.
For sure.
Like to turn around and look and be like, oh shit, that's Jon Voight.
Yeah. No, it was great. He put me as much at ease as anyone could. Yeah.
So, it's funny because we're talking about you and the process to go ahead and play the young version of Jon Voight. And it just seems like you're being tapped to play young versions of multiple icons, because in The Old Man, which is coming to FX in 2022, you're playing a young version of Jeff Bridges now. And so, I mean, these are good people to play young versions of, for sure.
It's a deeply humbling experience, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Ridiculous.
So tell me a little bit about The Old Man, because obviously it's not out yet at all, so I don't know much other than a clip from the trailer. What type of show is
it? It's spy thriller, family drama. Spy thriller, family drama.
Okay.
It's based on a book, though I think it departs pretty quickly from how the book is laid out. He's basically, Jeff Bridges is this former deep ops CIA, black ops CIA guy, deep cover who has gone off grid for decades and decades, and had a family, and suddenly his past catches up with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see a bit of his, we get to understand the origin story. It starts to thread out as we understand what's happening to him in present day.
You get to play him in the operative times. Nice.
I do. Yeah, it was great fun. It was we still have more shooting to do. We're gonna finish it up, because it all got blown up. My first day of shooting was February 2020.
Oh wow.
And then we were supposed to, they got a decent amount of Jeff stuff in LA, and then the whole production was supposed to move to Morocco that spring, which of course didn't happen. We picked it back up in the fall after things evened out a bit over the summer and some of the shooting came back. And after a week of shooting, Jeff got his lymphoma diagnosis, which I think maybe some people have heard about. So he was out. So we came and got most of my stuff for my timeline. And now it's been a slow wait till Jeff has decided to grow his hair back and gain his weight back. Mm-hmm. He made it public in September that when he was in early treatment before the vaccines were happening in January for his lymphoma, he got COVID in the hospital. So he was laid up in the hospital with that on top of everything. So it's been a rough fucking road for that dude. But he's been as spirited as you might imagine. We'll come back and catch his stuff in about a month or so.
Yeah. And another icon too. And what differences in looking at, because when you go back and look at young Jeff, there's tons more, and they're not always necessarily a good reflection. Like, you don't want to be the dude.
Right.
Watch that.
Right.
Almost. So what kind of what do you do to prep for that versus, obviously I'm sure you'll be able to at some point pick his brain a little bit more and things like that, but what did you do to prep for that?
Yeah, I mean, he and I just sort of crossed paths in the makeup trailer as well, as fate would have it, and sat down for a while and talked more. He's much more prone to sort of speaking philosophically about the whole thing. I mean, in terms of these two icons, they're at opposite ends of the spectrum in a lot of ways, as I think.
He kind of is the dude in a lot of ways, he really does.
He is. He's sort of a very present, sober, ambitious version of the dude. Yeah. And as gentle and welcoming as you'd want to expect. So we spoke a bit on that front, and then the showrunners, Dan Schatz, and they were we talked a lot about how it definitely did not want to be like a young Jeff Bridges impression. It had to be this character specifically, and so there was not a lot of, there's some callbacks to certain things, but
that's good.
Yeah, it was that frees it up a bit.
Yeah, at least you can make it your own and not have to worry too much about it.
Yeah,
because there's a big difference. And in both characters, there's a there's a big age discrepancy there. So
Yeah.
I guess even if everything in the mannerisms are different, that would make sense too. Like if I watch a video of me when I'm 20, it's not like,
Yeah.
you know,
It's not you're not doing an impression of your older self, right?
Yeah, you know, I'm just as dumb, but you know, the other things don't fall.
Oh, brother, I hear that.
Yeah, so that's good. I'm really looking forward to that one. And you know, there's
it's gonna be really good. Oh fuck, it's gonna be so good. I promise.
I know.
The material is so good.
And
I'm excited for it.
And FX never drops the ball when it comes to drama. So I have once I saw it was on FX, I'm like, this is gonna be really good.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I'm excited for you and for that. And you know, those of you who haven't seen the remake of I Know What You Did Last Summer, Bill was also part of that show, and it's kind of funny in doing a little research for it. I saw a quote of yours that I thought was really funny. Is that you had no idea? Don't worry, it's nothing horrible. You had no idea who the killer was, to the point where all the actors had a pool to see who the killer was going to be. And I won't ruin anything, of course. I don't like to spoil anything because people can go back and watch anytime. So, so you don't know who it is all the way up until the end.
Yeah, I think we were kept in the dark until we shot for about 4.5 months altogether, and it wasn't until about 3 months in that Sarah Goodman, the showrunner, gave it to us. She was really protecting anybody playing at it or anything. She wanted everyone as potentially guilty and innocent as possible.
That's a good idea, because I guess if maybe subconsciously, you tend to drift into that. It's it reminds me, we had Cheryl Hines on, who's on Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David, and they give no notes, they give nothing. Like they don't even know sometimes what they're going to talk about. And she was saying that she begged Larry for some notes beforehand, and he said, "I'll share it with you. You have to promise not to even let on or practice anything or try to, so it does make sense."
Yeah,
I guess if you kind of know you're the killer, even if, subconsciously you're kind of acting a little bit differently,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it was fun to experience some of the mystery at the pace that the audience will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've talked about a lot of series, but I was very surprised to see, maybe not surprised, but it was cool to see that you've actually come from Broadway. Really, that was really your path into this. And how did you get started just in Broadway? I mean, you were in Cabaret, which is about as far away from I Know What You Did Last Summer as it could be. Yeah, I guess maybe they're equally terrifying in different ways. Maybe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, one's genocide, one's serial murder.
Right.
Tomato. Yeah. I've done more off Broadway than Broadway, but a lot of theater in New York. I went to grad school for acting at NYU, and out of there did some theater in town, some understudies on Broadway, and some regional work. And but actually I moved to LA for like 2.5 years, to check out the on-camera stuff, to follow a girl, and was brought back by an old casting director who had worked to put me back in touch with some people in New York, and ended up getting a play back in New York off Broadway, a 9-hour play that ran over 10 months. And I live in New York now. I still have 90% of the worldly goods I owned in Los Angeles in 2009 in my buddy's barn in the Santa Monica Mountains.
Oh, wow.
Because I came to New York thinking it was just for a gig. And in that show, I met the woman who's now my wife. We made a family. I kept getting work out here, a lot of theater stuff. So
you didn't even have to move for her. Isn't that great?
Nice, right? Yeah, I didn't have to chase her to a city. She was just there.
Yeah. So wait, you said it was a 9-hour play?
Yeah, it was. There's a playwright, Horton Foote, who was really prolific. Some plays he wrote that people might know: A Trip to Bountiful, which he adapted that to a screenplay, which won an Oscar. He wrote Tender Mercies, starring Robert Duvall, which won an Oscar back in the day. He wrote the adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird, that obviously won the Oscars. So he's a guy who's been around forever. He wrote 9 full-length plays about sort of following his father's life from age 11 to 39. This theater, Signature Theater in New York, Michael Wilson had him adapt them into 50-minute one acts, and so it was this 9-hour play. We did three parts per night, so it was 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours, and then there were some days we went 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. with dinner and lunch breaks, and just did a marathon. It was great, man. It sounds intimidating. Oh man, it was so great, and people were right along for the ride.
It definitely sounds intimidating if you're part of it, because it's like
you have to remember those lines.
Yes, that's step one. Yeah, it was a lot of lines.
That's why that's one of 900 reasons I'm not an actor, because I would be like, it would be so daunting. And actually, to circle back on that, you did mention about for Ray Donovan having to grab the Boston accent. You're also in a film called Small Town, Wisconsin. Where which we were talking about it beforehand. Laurie asked you if you had to do a Wisconsin accent, and you were like, "Yes,
it's my favorite accent."
You absolutely.
Are you from there? How are you familiar with the Wisconsin accent?
No, but apparently when I drink, I somehow managed to get I've never even been to the state.
Where are you from?
Jersey. Nowhere near. I don't know where it comes from, but I'm like,
sister state to Wisconsin.
Don't you know?
I love that. That's great.
It'd be funny if, depending on what you got drunk on, you'd have a different accent. So,
right?
Yeah, you drank tequila, you'd have a Mexican accent. You take on.
I once went out in New York City and ordered around, or was ordering drinks, and the waiter said, "Are you from Wisconsin?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "I am too. I'm going to send a round of drinks over." And I was like,
nice.
Oh, and he's like, "Where are you from?" And I only even know 2. I was like, "Well, I was born in Madison and I live in Green Bay." Like, I only know.
Wow, nice.
Nice. Free drinks.
Yeah, free drinks is free drinks.
That's impressive.
So
fully support it.
So how do you go about that process to learn an accent? Like, I mean, obviously you have to listen to it over and over and over again and try to mimic it. It's almost like you're doing an impression, but then, you have to know your line. I'm very impressed by the whole process, because you've got 3 different tracks, knowing all the lines, but knowing how to say the lines, emote them, being the character. And then on top of that, having to nail the accent. And I would think that maybe nailing the accent kind of helps you be the character a little more, like you can kind of almost role play it a little more. What's the process to go ahead and learn and adapt to those accents?
No, that's well said. It sounds like 3 different endeavors, but in fact they're all deeply intertwined. Yeah. And like for both Ray Donovan and this film Small Town, Wisconsin, they had some dialect coaches that help you through it, give you some specific things to tether you to certain words, some certain sounds that carry their way through. You listen to a lot of it from various sources. I had the whole Donovan. This is not something I was involved with, but Karis Dorsey, who plays Ray Donovan's daughter, she was saying that they came to New York season 6, and they were shooting a scene in a bar, and the bartender was a Boston guy from Southie, and he was like Donovan. They're like, Ray Donovan. He's like, no, Donovan. Donovan. So the show's been saying Donovan wrong for the whole series. But anyway, so that had all that series to kind of key into what Jon was doing and what the others were doing. For Small Town, Wisconsin, I had the dialect coach, but I also grew up outside of Chicago, which is just a bit south of the Wisconsin border. My grandmother's been living up in northern Wisconsin for most of my life. I go up there summers and winters, and that one came a little more naturally to me. Nice. But yeah, it absolutely ties you in as you're learning the words, how to say the words. You're learning them in the context of the thoughts, the feelings, the intentions of the character. So, it makes it sound like a denser endeavor. It sounds more complicated, but each supports the other in a way that each is easier than they would be on their own potentially.
That makes sense. Do you walk around your daily life for a while just trying to use the accent as much as you can to kind of get it? Because I mean, I would think that's what I would do. I would probably annoy the hell out of everyone around me.
Yeah, no, I don't want my wife to divorce me, but it comes out. It comes out sort of intentionally. The more you work on it, go into a room and you find yourself spinning it out in life, and you feel like an immediate fraud in front of the guy working the bodega.
Right. Like you pull a Madonna, where you all of a sudden have that London,
yeah, right?
Whether you want to or not. Yeah, and then your wife winds up leaving you for somebody from Boston, which would be the worst part.
I actually do like that accent.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
It's a great one.
It's funny that when you go ahead and prepare for all of these different things, and we've talked about so many different roles, is that there's not like you as yourself, you have such a great personality, and you're just a great sense of humor, and I, as someone who doesn't do that, I could see how it's weird how you can still put a piece of yourself into something, but almost not too much. Where it always just fascinates me that whole process is how you can kind of channel someone else, but yet still there's just a piece of you in there as well. Because I mean, you're always going to be you.
Yeah, and there are different actors kind of explore that proportion differently. But I think ultimately, if you're not asking something from yourself in that endeavor, it's going to fall flat. It's going to feel fake. Your job one is just tell the fucking truth. So if it's too outside, just you got to bring whatever exterior explorations you're doing inside to make it authentic, to make it meaningful. Otherwise, people are going to just throw you the middle finger before you start talking.
Well, I do want to. I know we don't have tons of time, but I did want to ask you. You did work with some of my favorite filmmakers. In The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, you work with the Coen brothers, who, I mean, legend beyond legends. I mean, we've talked about the dude just had nothing even relatively to do with them, and yet here they are coming up. What's it like working with them? What's their what are they like on set? Are they just focused in? Like what are they like?
So easy, very focused. But they are among the most prepared artists I've ever worked with. You get most sets. You come to work every day. You have the pages with the scenes that you'll be working on for that day. They're called sides. Theirs include their storyboarding for the day, so they're letting everyone know what the shots they want to look like. Mm-hmm. They've thought everything out. They're working with the same crew they've worked with for 3 decades. Yeah. They get there and they know what they want to do. They know so much what they want to do that it feels like just kind of like playtime, because everything's set to go. You just get to mess around a bit. They'll tweak something here and there. The writing is so solid. Your job is clear. I was freaked out at the beginning. We were shooting in like Western Montana, and I was like, oh my God, how I'm going to be the guy that fucks up the Coen brothers. Right. Like, I am in my dream job and I'm going to destroy everything that came before and after because of how deeply I'm going to bite it in this one. And we got there on like late in the week. We it was a small town, so we gathered in like the conference center of the Holiday Inn to just a few of us to read through the script. Real easy, went away for the weekend, just knees knocking. And that Saturday, I think, I was just in my hotel room flipping through the TV, and all of a sudden there comes on Lebowski, the dude. Yeah. And I just sit back and watch like the last 3/4 of The Big Lebowski, and it's so good. And I'm like, who do you think you are that you could fuck these people up? Like, these guys are way too good for you to be the problem. Yeah. And it really put me at ease. I was like, all I got to do is show up and talk and mean it. And we had a great time. It felt so relatively easy and calm. And
yeah, it's such a great perspective too, because, to watch it and be like, well, these guys are going to handle handle me the right way no matter what, is probably not the perspective most people would get. They would watch it and go, my God, this is magnificent, and it would double down on the fear of it. It's like but it's so true. Like you wait your whole life to want to be involved with certain people, work with certain people, but then when you get that call, I could see the nerves absolutely setting in big time, for sure.
Yeah, it was scary, but it was scary, and then it wasn't. And they, because they're so prepared and so confident, they couldn't be calmer. So they're just having a good time. They're just kicking around. Through all the press we did for, in Venice and London and LA, New York for the next 6 months when it was coming out, they just were like, we're fine. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's great. And the storyboard thing makes total sense too, because the visuals of their films and any of their projects are their own character in its own way, so to hear that they give you sides that have the storyboards in it, they have that down. That's so great. And before you go, I also know that you are part of a podcast, that you're doing a dramatic podcast, that you're playing a part in that. Where can people check that one out?
That'll come out on where?
I'm sure everywhere.
It's called the Miranda Obsession. It's based on an article that Vanity Fair ran, I think in the late '90s, about this woman Miranda who would somehow find the numbers for all these famous men, lots of Hollywood people, celebrity chefs, politicians. And would basically start affairs with these men just over the phone. Nobody ever met her. There was one guy who met her. They'd fall in love with her. They'd all be wondering who this mysterious Miranda woman is. So it's about, in fact, I play a young Warren Beatty in it. So add that one to the list.
Look at that. At least you're playing young, attractive actors one after another, No one gave you a young Steve Buscemi to worry about. So
no, I love Steve.
Me too, man.
Me too. But that's so you're a young Warren Beatty in that. That's very cool. So Warren Beatty was one of the people who was.
Warren Beatty did Miranda. Yes, very good. De Niro. It's insane. It's a really bizarre story. It should be a lot of fun. That's helmed by Rachel Brosnahan, that I did a movie with a few years back. I'm Your Woman, and she's got a bunch of great people coming in for it.
Yeah, she's fantastic too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like casting directors have this young Hollywood actor list, and Bill is on it. It's like you're going to be Robert Redford one day.
Right, exactly.
Harrison Ford.
I'm getting old real quick here, guys.
Well, Bill, I can't thank you enough for joining us. I want everyone to go ahead. For the best way to keep up with everything is you can follow Bill on social media. And again, the coolest tag, Bill Heck Yes, is his both his Instagram and his Twitter, and you can keep up with him there. He also has a website. It's billheck.com, right? The website.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can follow him there. But most importantly, check out Ray Donovan on January 14th. I'm really excited for it too. And you've been a great guest, Bill. I wish you nothing but the best.
Rob, Laura, thanks so much, guys. It's been a real pleasure. Thank
you for watching The Hole. I am Rob Sprance.
And I'm Laura Levine.
Later, motherfuckers.